So after we get the data in the correct JSON format, then the Xbasic function, which is handling the callback, then executes this JavaScript. So this here in these 3 lines we're constructing a string of JavaScript commands that are going to get sent back at the end of the Ajax callback. So you can see here we're creating a JavaScript variable called _cal, which gets a pointer to the calendar object. And you recall we discussed previously that the get control method of the dialog object gets you a pointer to the actual calendar object. And then what we're doing is we're putting inside the underbar data property of the calendar object this JSON data. So we're just simply putting all of the JSON data for the current month inside a variable of the calendar object, and then we're calling the calendar object's refresh method. And the refresh method then will redraw the calendar, calling the onItemDraw function for each day on the calendar. So now that we've seen how the Ajax callback works to retrieve the data that needs to be displayed on the calendar, let's go back now to the JavaScript function and look now not at the month navigate, but at the calendar draw item function. And as you recall, this function is going to get called for each item on the calendar. And when we say item, we mean day on the calendar. So here is let's look at the code now that actually draws each item on the calendar. So you can see when we examine this here, if a particular day only has one order, then we actually display the order and we display it as a hyperlink that you can click. But if a day has more than one order, we write multiple and then we turn that into a drop-down menu. So let's go back now to the JavaScript and take a look at it. So first you can see we're getting a pointer to the calendar object using the get control method, which we've done several times previously. And so now we have a JavaScript object called curObject. And then we're getting the actual data that we need to display. And as you recall from the Ajax callback, put the JSON data that needs to be displayed inside a variable in the calendar object called underbar data. So cal data now is the JSON object of events, of orders that need to be displayed. So now let's carry on. So first what we're doing here is we're saying that if this variable called current object underbar menu items is not defined, then let's go ahead and define it as a JavaScript object. And we're going to use this in the case where a particular day has more than one order. Now you can see here that this calendar draw items, one of the variables passed into it is the type, and the calendar draw items is actually called several times during the drawing of the calendar. It gets called when the month navigators are drawn, and it gets called when the date navigators, etc., are called. And when the actual days themselves are being drawn, the type is equal to date. So we only need to populate the items if the type is equal to date. So here we go, and now we're saying that if the calendar data is defined, then we're going to do this. So when the calendar is initially displayed, there may be no data, in which case we don't want to call any of this code over here. So this code block now is only going to be called if we're in the mode where we're actually drawing individual items and the calendar data actually exists. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video.